So right now I'm depressed. I'm dealing with depression, and I want to talk about that. Basically, I'm on that cusp of being so depressed that I can't get out of bed. I just don't want to do anything. You know, all I'm doing is spending my life ruminating and considering ending myself. And then there's the other side where I'm not doing that, and I feel like I'm just right on that edge where, like, the plan for today, if there was a plan, was just going to be to just wallow in bed in the darkness and try and just sleep my problems away, or if not, I don't know, try and maybe distract myself with something on YouTube or social media, or just anything to just not be in my own head. But it's interesting. I thought about recording my thoughts about the topic of depression, but normally I'm either doing it when I'm not depressed, you know, like I've kind of come out of it a little bit, and you know, while I have had like a clinical diagnosis of chronic depression from a doctor, which basically means I'm always going to have it to some degree, you know, like with all things, you know, they ebb and flow, and some days you feel better than others. And I kind of feel like with me, it's a case of feeling like I'm either doing all right, as in I'm surviving and I'm doing a bit more than just, you know, hiding in bed with the covers pulled over my head, and the opposite, which is just that. And, you know, sometimes you just want to talk about how you're feeling when you're in the thick of it, but you can't, because you're just too depressed to do that. So I'm sort of just outside of that, I suppose. But, you know, it's not been too long ago that I was, just struggling, really struggling with life and considering just calling it a day, really. And I was just thinking about, you know, like reflecting on life and what I'm doing with myself. And it's kind of one of these things, because I think one of the reasons why some people get depressed is because they feel alone and like no one cares about them. And unironically, this video is going to no doubt perform as well as previous videos where, I don't know, 1 to 4 or 5 people are going to even watch it. And maybe 1 or 2 of those clicks will be me, just to make sure the video uploaded okay. So, you know, it just exacerbates the issue, really. Because I think this is a thing, like if you are depressed and you're struggling and you feel like the reason for that, because there's like several different reasons why you might be depressed, but if the reason is because you feel like someone of low value, then, you know, posting on social media isn't really going to help. That's just going to exacerbate the problem, because you're going to go into the world, post out a thing, not get much back, because why would you? You're just a nobody. And then, you know, that's just going to confirm the bias, not necessarily the bias, I suppose, but the fault that you yourself aren't really worthy. And worryingly, maybe you're not, maybe I'm not. Sometimes I reflect on my life and I think about all the bad things that have happened. I have an inclination to do that. I think it's probably related to this like high neuroticism trait. My brain just goes down these negative pathways quite frequently, struggles to find the positives. Like when I look at my life and I think about it over the history of me being born, I kind of punctuate the life events or the periods in my life by, oh, that was the time I was suffering with this. Oh, that was the time I got fired from that job. Oh, I remember that year. That was the year that I had that breakup. Or, oh, that was the year that, you know, my friends decided that they would just turn on me and start bullying me for some reason, or whatever it is, you know. So I think most people, they're like, oh yeah, that was the year we went on, you know, vacation holiday somewhere. That was the year that we got the new car. That was the year we got engaged. That was the year we got married. That was the year we had our first kid. That was the year we had our second kid. My life doesn't really look like that. It's not how I picture the timeline of my life. It is punctuated by episodes of suffering, which is pretty worrying. I think it's one of those things that most people can relate to. But when you talk about the topic of depression, I think I really do worry that people will think, look at this self-indulgent twat moaning and bitching and complaining about his problems. Yeah, we all have problems. We all have mental health issues. We all have to do things we don't want to do, all that kind of shit. You know, and they'll hate you. You know, people will look at me right now, potentially, let's just say this video gets 10 views. I would imagine 5 of the 10 people are going to think, look at this guy, this bad man who is complaining about his ailments, his problems, whereas I don't want to hear that. I want to hear solutions to my problems. I mean, I might get to that towards the end of the video, so stay with me if that's what you're thinking, but maybe not. I don't want to make any promises here. This is just a rant. I don't know where this is going. But yeah, I'm very aware of the fact that just, to anyone else, I'm just a random stranger. I'm not intelligent, witty, charismatic, super good looking, helpful, useful, highly skilled, and willing to offer all my my abilities, my skill set to whoever asks for it. I guess in some ways I am a low value human, but I'm hoping that some of the sort of self-reflections and the insights that I have might at least be beneficial to someone. Otherwise I wouldn't bother recording this. I'll turn it off and get back into bed and contemplate on my dilemma or my sorrows, I suppose. So maybe there is a bit of hope within me that thinks that maybe there's something in me that could at least assist someone else. Because rationally, I do believe that no matter where you are in life, it doesn't matter if you're not a pro or you're an expert at something. You can still kind of help other people that just maybe aren't quite on your level yet, or haven't maybe thought of certain things that you thought about. It doesn't matter what it is. You could be a tennis player. Like you don't have to be Roger Federer or whoever in order to teach and commentate and talk about tennis. Like you can just be a local tennis coach, or you can just be someone that's just picked up a racket and bounced the ball about once. And to the uninitiated that hasn't even done that, you're going to be able to tell them, oh, this is the problem you have when you're trying to return a serve in tennis. Your eye coordination is going to be out. You're going to miss the racket. And to someone that's never even swung a tennis racket, they won't even know that that's coming. So there's even something you can pass on to someone, I think, that's sort of not quite where you are yet in some way, and that can be beneficial, perhaps more beneficial, because you know what it's like to barely be able to even hit an incoming tennis ball compared to someone who's been doing it for so long and is such a high level at it that their considerations are sort of, the very minute sort of micro decisions and stuff that you don't get to until you're at that expert level. So, you become a bit detached from it, the better and the more expert and the higher status, highest ranked you get at a thing. So, so that's something I do believe is true. Like it just is. It makes perfect sense. It is common sense. So I guess that is why there are so many people on YouTube, for example, that just put videos out. Millions of videos are getting uploaded to YouTube every day. Most of those people aren't the best experts in their field. I mean, that'd be physically impossible. Take a subject like art or drawing or painting. Like, there's not many experts that are like at the very top levels, the people that are selling paintings for millions and have just completely mastered art. Most artists would say they haven't mastered art, but there's enough people, varying levels, to put stuff out there, and potentially gain a following, or, so some people are going to potentially be interested in their content. Anyway, I'm going off on tangents here. But yeah, so here's the thing, like my personal journey with this whole depression thing, like I say, it ebbs and flows. It's not really good days and bad days. It's almost like good periods and bad periods, or, okay periods and bad periods, to be honest. And luckily, I'm of an age and have had a certain, I've survived into my 40s now. And at that point, it's like, okay, I've been through this so many times that I know that I can I sort of feel like I can kind of survive it. If I'm in a bad way, I feel like, okay, I've been through depression before. I've come out the other side, which is very useful, because when I was young and I first started getting really depressed in my teenage years, I'd never really experienced it before. For anyone that, and just to elaborate, like, depression basically it feels so bad that you can't, like when it's at its worst, like the only thing I can relate it to is if you can imagine the worst experience possible, it's that, and that over a prolonged period of time. And that is why people kill themselves, because they've had enough of it. They just can't deal with the torment, the suffering, the pain, and it ain't going away. If you just because I mean, some people, they get depression, and I don't want to diminish it, and it feels really bad, and they get to the point where they want to end it all. But for them, perhaps they've gone through their sort of 10s, teens, 20s, 30s, 40s even, and now they're having some, I don't know, it's just, some person who's had a life event that's like really knocked them back. Maybe their parent has died, maybe they've had some other significant, breakup in their marriage or something. Everything was kind of going okay, and obviously you have ups and downs still, even if things for the most part are going okay with the regular person. But sometimes that one episode can really hit people. Whereas I've had that one episode so many times now, but I'm somewhat used to it, and I think that to some small degree does help. Just knowing that you survived it and come out the other side alive. But yeah, in my teens, obviously, like this is like the first few times I'm really experiencing like really bad depression. It feels like every day feels like you've been told you're going to die, or people you care about have just died. I'm sure a lot of people have experienced like, family members or friends dying at some, they'll definitely have that at some point. And that horrible sinking feeling in your stomach, that wrenching feeling where you just want to throw up, you just want to anesthetize yourself, you want to do anything to escape it. The pain is so bad, the mental pain. This is what we're talking about with like really bad depression. But there's levels of it. Sometimes you get that. When it's that bad, you can't do a lot. Other times it kind of like you get a break from it. So it's difficult. I think the thing with depression is it's different with everyone. Like you'll get people that go to work and they smile and laugh with their co-workers, and then they'll come home at night and then they'll cry into their pillow, as soon as they're alone and they're with their thoughts. And you think, is that like what's going on there? And then you get other people that are like, look, I can't even have a job. Like I can't even laugh. Obviously both examples, if you just can't get out of bed, you can't laugh, you can't go to work because you're so depressed, and those that still do that stuff but then get depressed at the end of the day or whatever. Both scenarios are obviously depression, and it feels wrong to rank one over the other, but it seems pretty apparent if you're someone who, from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, you're so debilitated, or you feel so debilitated that you pretty much can't do anything, right? You're just going to the toilet to relieve yourself. That almost feels like so much effort. You feel like, should I just end it so that I don't have to even do that? There's so many degrees of it. Maybe I'm skirting around the issue a little bit here because this is quite embarrassing for me to even talk about. But yeah, for me personally, I do have those days where I just don't want to eat. I don't want to eat. Sometimes I feel like I would be better off maybe just starving and then just dying, and then there you go, problem solved. And there's times when I've even had certain jobs. Like right now I'm self-employed and I work part-time and I don't make enough money to fully cover my bills. I'm in a pretty stressful situation. Maybe I'll talk about that a little bit further on, but yeah, there's times when I've had like a more of an employed job, and I would go to work, and sometimes my co-workers would catch me staring out the window. I'd be working on like the 4th, 5th story of a building, they catch me staring out the window and they're, oh, Ben, you're such a daydreamer. You know, you're always looking out the window, aren't you? And you're always trying to, you know, and what goes through your mind, you know? And they have no idea that what I'm actually looking at is the floor beneath me. Because I'm seriously considering, if I jumped right now, would that floor be hard enough and solid enough to just, you know, end it briefly and quickly? It's quite funny, the juxtaposition between, I think, what I'm thinking and what other people think I'm thinking. Yeah, I'm not even joking. I'm seriously weighing it up in all seriousness. You know, just completely stone cold rational. Like, would this height be enough to end it? Sometimes I've driven in my car and I thought, if I just put the pedal down right now and I got to like, is my car fast enough so that if I smashed into like a wall or a barrier at this amount of speed, would that be enough to just end it instantly? You know, this sort of stuff goes through my head. Trouble is, being someone who's quite highly anxious, you know, there's always that fear that you're going to do this thing. You know, you're going to jump from a height, crash into a building, and then it's not going to work. And then you'll end up just paralyzed and you won't be able to move or do anything. And then, you know, you then have to rely on other people to basically, you know, put you out of your misery. And I don't think I have enough people in my life who I could ask that of. It probably sounds stupid, like, if you've never sort of had these thoughts, but this is what goes through my head. Yeah, it's pretty horrific. But no, another thing, I don't know whether you want to call it lucky or not, but I have, because I've got anxiety, you know, by definition, I've got like a fear of being dead, phantophobia, because I think a lot about my existence, and, you know, I've spent too much time than a regular person should spend about thinking about what happens after you die and what happened before you were born. Specifically, for me, being an atheist, you know, I'm of the opinion that whatever life was like or existence was like before I was born, that's going to be what it's going to be like after I die. Makes complete sense to me. I've tried to become religious, I can't do it. I'm so convinced by my sort of rational brain that I can't even bullshit myself into being religious. And trust me, I've tried. So what was life like? What was experience like? Well, there was no experience. There wasn't anything. And obviously people will say, oh, well, therefore you don't need to worry about it. You weren't worried about anything before you were born, therefore you don't need to worry about anything when you're dead. It's not about, like, if you had, they call it phantophobia, this fear of being dead. The problem isn't that you're worried that when you're dead, that you're worried that you're dead, which, you know, is the typical argument against this. No, the worry is that you will be dead while you're alive, if that makes sense. And it's that is the problem. You know, that's like, you know, because you could use the same argument if you were like strung out on a torture rack. It's like, well, when you're dead, you won't even remember being tortured. So don't worry about it, bro. Just let yourself get completely tortured and, you know, writhe around in pain or whatever, and just embrace the pain, bro. You know, it just life doesn't work like that, unfortunately. But anyway, yeah, a fear of being dead. That fear, I think, has prevented maybe, well, dozens of attempts to end it all. Yeah, so it's a good thing, you know. Self-preservation is good. Otherwise, we would just all, we just walk out into traffic every day, and if we get hit and we die, we wouldn't even care, because we wouldn't even know that not wanting to be around was bad. But yeah, self-preservation, I think, is quite strong, obviously, with someone who is quite prone to anxiety generally. it just all comes along for the ride, sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, getting to the day to day, like right now, like I say, I mean, I'm self-employed. I choose my own hours when I work, and I've kind of designed my life to be that way by choice, just because I have to deal with depression. And then the good thing about it is, if I have a mental ailment, you know, if I'm going through some bad times, I don't have to clock in right now. I can just take the day off, and I'm pretty much, I mean, maybe not, but I feel like I'm gonna have to take the day off because things are getting on top of me. You know, when it gets to that point where the kind of cold, rational thoughts about ending it start creeping in, you know that something's quite wrong there. You know, and I, like I say, I live in this weird torturous space of like being scared to be dead, but also struggling with the the day-to-day suffering of being alive. It's messed up, and yeah, it's difficult because like when you're someone like myself, neurotic, I don't think it's possible to just be normal. You know, you're gonna need to have coping strategies and things. For some people, that's going to be just distractions. You know, they are going to be on, I don't know, like just binging Netflix or YouTube videos or something, or they're going to just binge video games and just absorb themselves in it. You know, they'll find ways to just, I don't know, binge on drink or drugs or something. Maybe not even binge. Maybe some people have figured out a way to like escape to those things for short periods of time, just to be able to like get a breather. I mean, I can't really speak for anyone else, but it seems that that's how it is. But yeah, I'm no exception. I found recently getting really, really consumed by particularly videos on YouTube content, and perhaps that is why I'm even putting a video out myself now, because I've become so identified with this platform and with the fact that everyone puts videos out. Maybe inside I feel like, oh, that's what us humans do now. We put videos out where we, you know, talk about stuff and create stuff. Admittedly, I know that this isn't one of those highly flashy videos where there's like, you know, edits and cuts to new things every 3 seconds, and, you know, highly polished presentation and, you know, scripted dialogue or monologue in my case. Yeah, there's none of that. There's just me thinking about what's going on in my life and trying to articulate that in some way that's reasonably coherent. And at this point, I don't know what we are, let's just say 20 minutes into this talk, I'm doing a mediocre job of it. I don't feel like I'm really getting to the point. I don't feel like I'm really articulating what I want to say well. I'm very aware of the fact in the back of my mind that, let's just say the YouTube gods smiled on me and showed this video to like 100,000 people, and out of those, you know, 10,000 people clicked it and whatever. Most people, like, they would click it, but then they would get the fuck out of it. They would think this is boring shit. Get to the point. Stop skirting around the issue. You know, they wouldn't consciously say this, but their minds would think, give me more stimulation. Give me a hook. You know, give me something of substance to latch onto here. Something of novelty that I'm not used to seeing. You know, a guy just talking about some random thoughts is just boring as hell. Why would I watch this? Like, but at the same time, like, you know, I'm not here to spend 7 days editing like the perfect video on depression. I'm just here to keep it real. This is just me being a regular person talking about, or trying to talk about, regular thoughts. Well, not perhaps regular thoughts, but just the thoughts that are taking place. But yeah, it's just communicating anything is so difficult. I think when you are depressed, when I am depressed, like, my mind is buzzing with ideas and activity. You know, there's like a million. It's like I'm standing in front of a million signposts and a million pathways that I could potentially walk down, and maybe I walk down one for a little bit, then I backtrack, and then I walk down another one, and the pathways just branch out into other pathways, and my mind then becomes a maze that I kind of get quite lost in. It's quite overwhelming, I guess you could say. It's hard to really latch on to an idea. It's hard to think about a simplistic, like a story arc or framework to just explain in a video, like this is what's going on. I can't think of, like, beginning, middle and end. There's just too much going on, so I'm trying to just do the best I can. So I apologise for that, or apologise for my lack of communication expertise. And yeah, like, I think the trouble is, when you're down, you're feeling low, last thing you want to do is be like super animated and make jokes and be entertaining and stuff. It's like, I haven't got the energy for that. And I suppose that's the thing with anyone who is feeling down about things. If you really want to know what someone is, like, if you want to know about someone's faults when they're actually kind of in the depths of it or close to it, it's impossible for that to also come along with, a fun and entertaining presentation, because they're just the antithesis to each other in some ways. But yeah, I think I've said before, it's not all bad. Overthinking isn't all bad. Being a perfectionist isn't all bad. Some of these traits of being a neurotic person are actually useful, because, for example, it doesn't make you take stupid, unnecessary risks, whereas other people are like, oh, there's a swimming pool, underneath my hotel balcony. I'm on the 5th floor. I'm going to try jumping into that swimming pool because that would be fun. And then, some idiot just tries it, they slip, they break their neck, or they don't realise that the pool is only like a foot deep with water, because they just don't think about it, and then they just, again, break their neck. It's a useful survival mechanism to be somewhat risk averse and to worry, basically, about the what ifs, what could go wrong, all that kind of stuff. It's not all bad, but obviously you have this other side to it, where you are going to be more susceptible to these kind of negative effects of anxiety, and you can find yourself becoming depressed and inhabiting this place of kind of depressive thought, and that's obviously not good. Life's so messed up, isn't it? It's like, I often think it's almost like some kind of sick joke. Like, I don't believe in God, but it's almost as, like, I'm more prone, I don't necessarily believe in this, but there's this idea of a simulation theory where it turns out that we ourselves are simulations. We're not even real. If you've ever seen the film The Matrix, that basically, or Rick and Morty or something like that. But this idea that, like, us people, we make simulations, we make video games. Imagine if you made a video game where the characters in it, the AI characters, were conscious, they were somewhat sentient, but they were inhabiting a simulation. They weren't in the real world. Perhaps even they could go on to make their own simulations, which would be conscious. There's another film, I think it's called The 13th Floor, which was basically that whole idea. I'm a sci-fi fan. I love these kind of weird, deep ideas. Anyway, statistically, you can argue, like, probability-wise, that we're living in a simulation just through that concept alone, that hypothetical. But whether that's true or not, I do feel as though we're living in one, or I'm living in one, and I feel as though it's almost like every human that's born has been programmed with a certain objective. It's like a video game character when you get to pick their stats, and you only have so many stat points, and you can make them really strong or really smart, really agile, good at whatever it is. There could be 20 different criteria, and you distribute the stats to design your own character in certain types of sort of RPG role-play games. So I feel like people are like that, and you can argue that we are like that just genetically, like biodiversity and all that. We are obviously all different, and that is probably good for humanity in general, because if we were all just identical, we wouldn't thrive as a species. We need to work in groups and have different traits that help us as individuals. You know, sometimes you need the big brawny meathead when you want to just get physical shit done, and sometimes you need the calculating intellectual when you need to figure out a strategy, and you just need different types of people. But with me, sometimes I think that I've just got this. I've just had a bit of a bad deal, you know. Like whoever programmed me into this simulation, you know, whether it was, you know, some big AI computer god, some entity, some person outside of life, God, whatever you want to call it, you know, evolution, if you want to call it that. They went a little bit too heavy on the neuroticism stats. Almost just, it's just like arbitrarily just to see what would happen. The trouble is, me being like a conscious sentient being, I have to live with the consequence of that. You know, it's not a, you know, like this is the troubling bit. You know, when you have consciousness and awareness and feelings involved, you know, the feelings of that you can kind of process and you can think about that after the fact or before the fact has even happened, it all gets very complicated and very difficult to deal with. So yeah, I do sometimes feel like this sick joke has been played on me sometimes, where it's like, why do I have to have these stats? Why can't I have the good stats? You know, be more susceptible to positive emotion. You know, why can't I have the, you know, have won the genetic lottery so far as, you know, physical appearance goes? Like, why am I stuck playing life on hard mode? But yeah, I mean, that's true for most people. Most people aren't the most attractive person, because there can really only be one of those, or, you know, there's going to be far, like with everything, you know, there's only ever going to be a very small percentage of people at the top of anything, whether it's, you know, the good looking people working for a modelling agency or whatever it is. You know, most people aren't going to be able to do that, the same way most people aren't going to be able to work as astrophysicists in a prestigious university or something. Most people are kind of going to be in the middle. But yeah, I just feel as though I kind of know, you know, on one level at least, why I am the way I am, why I am now depressed, because I'm obviously predisposed to it, to getting depression, and why I think the way I think. But it's tough. It is really tough. And you just think it's just not fair. It just is not fair. You see people that, you know, and I'm sure I'm not the only person that thinks this. There are people in life that maybe they're just a bit stupid, you know, low IQ people. They just, I don't know, throw themselves into an endeavour, but then because they don't really think about it, they don't really see the risks, they just go ahead with it, and that then makes them succeed in that thing. And you just can't understand it. If you've ever seen I'm a big Simpsons fan, and if you've ever seen the Simpsons episode, I think it's called Grimes, the character, there's a character in it called Grimes. He's basically, you know, like, he's highly neurotic guy, ends up hanging around with Homer Simpson, gets very distraught over the fact that, you know, you have Homer who's a bit, you know, bit dumb, bit lazy, doesn't have that much in the way of like work ethic and good qualities and stuff like that. But obviously, you know, he's got a pretty nice house, wife, kids. You know, he's living the dream as far as Grimes is concerned. And it's a really funny episode. But then years later, I sort of started to identify with Grimes, and you know, towards the end of the whole episode, like, he's kind of seen as just someone who's just overly analytical, overly kind of judgmental and critical. You know, he's not seen as the sort of person that, you know, is a good, virtuous character. But yeah, he's an honest character, and I'm worryingly, I can really relate to this guy. I get so frustrated when I see people that don't have to sort of deal with certain aspects of life that I'm having to deal with, and that kind of sense of injustice kind of rolls me up and makes me quite frustrated, I suppose. So yeah. Anyway, long story short, so I'm in a position right now where, self-employed, not really making enough money out of self-employment anymore. And then again, it's reasons out of my control. I don't really want to invoke God, but sometimes it's easier just to use that as a placeholder for like fate or circumstance or something. But I feel like in life, so far as my work life goes, the gods have decided that I should be punished and that I should have it such that, you know, customers are no longer gonna pay for my services basically anymore. You know, basically times have changed, expectations have changed. The things that I offer on a work kind of level aren't cutting it. People don't want what I've got anymore. It was fine 10, 15 years ago, but you know, with the wonders of modern technology, whether it's like AI, automation, it's just, yeah, it makes people redundant. You know, you could spend an entire lifetime becoming, let's just say, a writer or a musician or an artist. Well, now you have AIs that can do all of that. ChatGPT can do your writing for you. Sono, is an AI that can write music, you know, good music. You know, it'd take you weeks to compose these songs, days possibly. And this app can obviously just do it in minutes. And then you've got Mid-Journey, Leonardo AI, just loads of AI art and image generating programs that can just do all of that stuff too. You know, you might have worked for 30 years developing your artistic portfolio, and now an AI, even if you got really good, which is really difficult, most people won't get really, you know, good to a super high level, but even if you did, you know, AIs can just replicate your portfolio and probably do it better than you within the space of minutes or days or a day. When I say AI, obviously a prompter can do that. There might be little issues with your portfolio to some degree, or an AI portfolio or whatever. You know, like these things aren't perfect yet, but they're getting better all the time and they're already good enough. And I know that they're good enough because they've made my personal endeavours redundant, you know, and I know I'm not the only one. People are losing work across the board. So one of my problems is, now that I've sort of somewhat been made redundant by these wondrous technologies that we're supposed to love and benefit from, that we don't actually, it's just, you know, shareholders get rich out of it, you know. Great news for Sam Altman and Elon Musk or whatever, people that are developing AI software, because they're great, they're multi-billionaires. Well, what about, you know, 99.99999% of people that are just having all their work or hobbies or whatever just taken away from them by all these applications and software? And obviously, once you have that baseline process, you know, businesses of various sizes are going to try and capitalize on it, and they're, you know, we're on a big race to the bottom, really, with all that kind of stuff. Anyway, the reason I'm talking about that, not to necessarily whinge about AIs, I mean, maybe I could save that for another video, but just to make the point that I'm redundant, and that my skills are redundant. The things that I've worked my life towards getting good at don't matter anymore. And so I realised at some point in the near future, I'm going to need to find a job, a full-time employed job. Being a highly neurotic person, that's going to create a lot of obstacles. Like I said, when I have had employed jobs in the past, it's normally difficult for the first couple of weeks, really highly stressful. And then the month, maybe 4, 5, 6 weeks after that, it gets quite fun, because then you get somewhat used to the initial difference of the like work environment and the structure in which you're living your life. You know, you after a couple of weeks, you become a little bit more habituated to, right, okay, I get up at 7 o'clock in the morning now, then I have to go to work now, then I have to work for 8 hours solid now, and then I have to come home, and then I have to, like you get into that routine, you become habituated to it after a couple of weeks. For anyone that for most people, they do that anyway, don't even think about it. For me personally, I don't have that routine. I work for myself. Sometimes I'll work 14 hours, other days I'll work 5. I can just do what I want. It suits me, Days like today, I don't even know if I'm going to do anything at this point. I'm struggling just to do this, just to do a talk video. But yeah, my point is, you have a few weeks of getting used to it, then you acclimatise, then you have maybe a couple of months of enjoying the work because there's novelty there, and you're learning new skills, you're doing new things. But then, for me personally, after about the 3-4 month mark of working in a job, especially the jobs that I've had in the past, I get bored. I don't want to do it. It's the same old. It's the repetitive process of just doing the same thing day in, day out. And there've always been jobs that I didn't choose that. I don't want to do that. If you're a writer, for example, you want to write novels. It's like, okay, your passion is writing and novels and things around that. Maybe you're a big fan of sci-fi or fantasy, or just the quirks of human interaction and psychology and social commentary. That's what you care about. That's what you focus on. That's what you've become good at doing. Writing or whatever. So then when you have to do a job that's just I don't know, grilling fast food items or making coffees or packing things on a warehouse production line, delivery driving, just all these sort of jobs that they're jobs that need doing, but they're jobs that that you're not suited to do. And obviously no one really wants to do, no one really wants to work in a sewage works and clear out sewage pipes blocked up with shit. But people do it, and they'll get paid reasonably well for it. Actually, tell a lie, having said that, last week I watched a video about a professional drain unblocker, like a plumber basically, who likes to block drains. He's got a whole YouTube channel on it, a successful one with hundreds of thousands of views per video. And there was a video that I didn't watch it. Someone else had it on in the background, and I did end up going on to watch it. I didn't choose to watch it. That's what I want to say. Anyway, this guy was really excited about cleaning out drains, and he was saying, I love it. I love this job. It's amazing. So actually, there are people who even enjoy cleaning out blocked drains, and who would have thought it, eh? But certainly, yeah, okay, that just shows that there are people that are suitable to different types of work. If you realise, for example, you're an intellectual, but there are no jobs for intellectuals, and there are only labouring jobs, on a building site, then you've got to just suck it up and become a builder, for example, or a labourer, which is obviously difficult for you because you're not maybe physically built for it, and that's not where your skill set lies. Some people are very extrovert, very outgoing, they're very good with people, and obviously they would be better being sort of front of house. They would be better dealing with customers and social interactions. And other people, I guess like myself, more introvert, we're happy just to, be in the background, getting on with our own thing, being given more autonomy and independence to sort of just work on our own, really, be self-sufficient. So, yeah, different jobs suit different people. We all know this, but it worries me now that the things that I am good at, the things I can do, are redundant skills, and the only jobs on offer, if you're like me and you've trained for one thing your entire life, and now you're looking to, for a career change. Like there's not many transferable skills here, and I'm just thinking, oh, okay, well, I can't now go into like some other professional job. I have to either completely retrain from the ground up, or I have to just do work that is available to me, and that is going to be completely unskilled, low-paid work. And the reason I'm talking about all this is because I think this is part of why it's a part. It's not, it's, I wouldn't say a drop in the ocean still, but yeah, it's not everything. Let's put it like that. But yeah, I know I'm going to have to. I'm going to perhaps have to. Or I am going to have to get a job, an employed job that is different from what I'm doing at the moment, and I'm not looking forward to it. And it's not because, I'm cowering away from the responsibilities of work. It's just maybe there is a bit of that, but another part is just knowing that I'm not going to be suited. You go to a job website, go to Indeed or job site, whatever, just some website that lists vacancies. You check it out, you see what's what, and it's like, right, okay, what have we got here? Lots of driving jobs, delivery jobs, dropping off parcels or driving lorries and trucks. And okay, what else have we got? We've got, customer service, basically listening to people yell at you every day and berate you because they're frustrated that the shitty company that you work for can't do their job properly, and then you have to just pick up the pieces on their behalf and sort out people's problems as best you can, even though you never create the problem, and even though you don't have much authority to even really fix it in a way that you would like in order to satisfy the customer properly. So you could be a customer service rep, you could be a carer for people. If you can feel compassion towards disabled or old people and you're happy to wipe their arseholes, that's an option for you. I have worked as a carer for about 6 months before, and I know what's involved there. And yeah, it's not for me. But whether, like I say, whether it or not it's for me or not, maybe that's just what I have to do. It's like, yeah, I'm not right for this job, but you got to do it. It's almost like being like, well, it's almost like someone saying, hello, sir, I heard you're a heterosexual man. And I'm like, yep, that's correct. And they say, right, well, there's a guy over there, go suck his dick. And I'm like, excuse me? And I'm like, yeah, that is your job now. You're a male prostitute, you're a gigolo, go suck his dick. And I'm like, I'm not suited for this. This goes against who I am as a person. But imagine just being like, okay, I guess I just got to do it now. Obviously, I think there's a difference between that and doing a driving job or something. But you get the idea. It's like, at least in my mind, it almost feels as bad as that, just having to completely go against who you are as a person and work a job that is the antithesis to what would suit you and your personality and all that kind of stuff. And I think anyway. So yeah, when I've had these jobs, like I say, you get 3 months in and you just get bored, you hate it, you just think, what am I doing? Like, I never wanted to do this anyway. It's like you could be an artist. I used to work. You could be an artist, and then you get a job as something adjacent to art, like maybe you're a kitchen designer, so you're designing the layouts of a kitchen, and it's sort of like art, but it's not really, I don't know, drawing, fantasy artwork of dragons and wizards or whatever that you might be your jam. It's not that. And anyway, you get to a point where it's just like, yeah, I don't think I want to do this anymore. This isn't really what I signed up for. This is, and as well, like if you were to work as a kitchen designer, it would get to a point where really it's a lot of customer interaction. So you might be, customers would be coming into your kitchen showroom, and then you'd be sitting them down. You'd be like basically selling them a kitchen, because I think a kitchen design ends up becoming more of a sales role. And yeah, if you're just very like, high neuroticism, high introversion, don't really get on with people, like people. It's just not for you, but that's what you end up having to do anyway. So yeah, it just gets to a point where it's like, okay, I've learned the basic skills, now I'm getting bored. And like I say, it wouldn't be the first time that I've been peering out the window on the 4th or 5th floors, looking at the tarmac beneath me, thinking, should I just jump? Should I just end it all? And so I'm worried now, moving forward, that that's what we're in for. You know, I speak to people that have quote unquote shit jobs that they wouldn't choose if they could choose anything in the world, but they have to do it because they need to keep a roof above their head or provide for their families or whatever. And yeah, they hate it. They fucking hate it. And I just think, really? That's what life is like? Because I know what it would be like for me. It would be like, yeah, I would hate it to the point where even when I get home, it's not like I'll be able to switch off and be like, oh, well, that was work. I hated it, but now we can just enjoy home life. No, I would be thinking about just how much I hate the job throughout my evenings when I go to sleep. Probably like recently, I've just been having nightmares most nights. It's not because I'm some like pathetic child that just is having weird night terrors and I'm scared of the boogeyman getting me. It's just my dreams are very realistic. I can't really tell the difference between them and reality, and they feel real at the time and throughout the sort of the waking portion of waking up in the mornings. It's like, when you're in that sort of half asleep mode. Like, anyway, I have these weird nightmares, and yeah, I'm just worried that that's what it's going to be like. It's like, right, okay. You might be someone who's, I'm not saying I'm like an intellectual type, I'm pretty much average IQ, I'd imagine, but let's just say I am average. So what? Okay, well now my job is peeling potatoes and I have to peel potatoes every day, or I don't know, milk goats or something, or cut fish heads off of fish, and that's just your job every day. Now, it sounds like me being so anti that type of job sounds like I'm criticising anyone who does do that sort of job. I don't. I respect you if you do that sort of job. Massively. But I also know that there are some people who can get on with and do that sort of job. I've known people with like learning difficulties, Down syndrome. Like I say, I used to work as a carer. I knew people that had Down syndrome. They had little jobs like that. Just go to work, cut fish heads off of fish. And they were pretty happy doing it. They didn't really know any different, any better. They obviously couldn't have done much better. They're not thinking, oh shit, I wish I was like lecturing to students at Oxford University or Harvard about quantum mechanics or something. They're not thinking that. They don't want to do that. I'm not saying I want to do that, but just to put the point across. I don't want to cut fish heads off fish. If I had, would I do it if I had to? Maybe, but it'd be one like if we were living in some weird like Mad Max post-apocalyptic world where everyone is just desperate for survival, and not only would you be happy to cut the fish head off the fish, you would eat the fish head because that's all there is to eat, and if you don't eat it, you die, basically. And if you know that everyone else is like that, then you'd probably get on with it and do it. But I think it's just knowing that there's just, I don't know if it's like a culture of it, but it's not just a culture, but there's evidence of people not necessarily liking their jobs, but tolerating their jobs. Most people tolerate their jobs. Obviously, if they didn't tolerate, they would be throwing themselves off of buildings or quitting their jobs, basically. That's how people can tolerate their jobs. And I just don't, there's certain jobs that I don't think I could even tolerate. And it's knowing as well that, there are, okay, I'm on YouTube. There are people on YouTube who pretty much do what I'm doing. They do it far more eloquently, better. They're more entertaining, granted. But that's just them. They're happy doing that. They're high energy and, just, they're happy to lean into controversial topics and trends and do whatever it takes. And they just love it. They love YouTubing. It's their thing. They love being in front of the camera. They love talking to people. They love whatever comes of it. They think it's an easy, fun job. I'm sure there's a lot of YouTubers that are struggling to do all of that kind of stuff and make a living, but certainly there's enough examples out there. I'm sure you know, you're on YouTube, you've seen them, but of people that are doing what to you looks like pretty fun work. It's like, oh, Dude Perfect. I don't know if you've seen their videos. They're like one of the biggest channels on YouTube. They get millions of views on everything, or tens of millions, hundreds of millions. It's just a bunch of guys hanging out, having fun, and then trying to do trick shots, basically. Like think of Paul or something, and having these kind of very difficult to do tasks. Like throwing a basketball in a hoop from a helicopter, shit like that. It's like just stupid non-work. Like, talk about pointless, frivolous work. This is what gets to me. I think you get people that are like, oh, you'd ask the guys at Dude Perfect, what do you do for a job? They like, oh, I just hang around with the guys. We get excited and have a laugh, and I don't know, try and throw a dart into a melon from 700 feet away or something using a catapult, and that's their job. And if I'd assume that they like their work. They seem like they like their work on this channel, and they obviously get a lot of money from it. That I would imagine that every member of that group of people. I don't really watch their videos. I watched like 5 or 6, maybe like 3 years ago. I don't even know if they're still producing videos. I think they are. But anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is, they're millionaires. They're millionaires for just doing entertaining stunts on YouTube. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with entertainment, but there's obviously a difference between that and keeping society running. People that, there's people that are, running power plants that provide us electricity, or the water supply, plumbers that fix pipes. Although plumbers an interesting thing, because we've got to a point now in society where I think plumbers have gone from being quite underrated to quite overrated. There was a plumber that needed some that was sort of came over to the house to give a quote, and basically to move a radiator. It was a maybe a half to a sort of 3/4 day job. They wanted like £1,500 for it, which was the equivalent of maybe like £2,000 a day. Like, how many professions out there are there that are so, jobs that are so difficult where you feel like, what, you're so difficult, so skilled, so good at what you do, you deserve £2,000 per day to do that. It's like, that's £10,000 a week, £40,000 a year. We're getting up to £500,000 through plumbing, and that's you being a plumber. Like, imagine you ran a plumbing company and you had, let's just say you had 50 guys going out and getting that work, and they took 50% of the profits and you took the other 50%. As a plumbing business, you could end up making hundreds of millions of pounds every year. Anyway, it just seemed like it was taking the piss. You shouldn't be charging that amount of money for that amount of work. Who in their right mind has the money to constantly pay for little jobs to be done? Not necessarily saying that moving a radiator is a little job, but jobs around the house. Yeah, it's crazy. Anyway, someone else obviously ended up doing that job in the end. And if they couldn't, yeah, I would have done it. Anyway, I'm sort of losing my train of thought here, which is another thing. I think when you're down, you sort of feel a bit tired, difficult to focus and stuff. But yeah, I think that's partly what this is about. And it's weird because even though I've spent my entire life dealing with anxiety, depression, and it's held me back in some ways, like it hasn't been enough to completely hold me back. It's not like I'm a complete loser and I've never had a girlfriend, or I've never been able to hold down a job, or I've never been able to have a friend, or it's not. I'm not in that position. I've got a girlfriend, partner. We've been together 2.5 years. Great relationship, but I'm aware that because of the work situation, if I can't sort things out, our relationship's going to end as well. People would say, "Oh, well, in the modern age, it shouldn't just be up to the man to earn a living." And no, she pays for half of stuff. I pay for half of stuff. That's how we roll. It is very much split 50-50 down the middle. But just imagine I can't pay my 50% share, and I'm now asking her to pay for me to survive and live. I can't justify that. I can't feel good about that. I can't. I'm not looking for a sugar mummy. That's I don't feel like that's a good virtuous trait for any man to do. I think there's just some weird intrinsic part of being a man where you feel like you've got to be a provider, whether that's a social construct or genetic. I don't know, it doesn't even matter. It's still part of who we are as men. And therefore you got to feel like you're of value. You got to feel as though you're bringing something to the table. And if you're not, and then your partner says, "Look, I can't do this anymore. You're not bringing anything to the table. I want to end this relationship," then they'll do it. And why wouldn't they do it? I wouldn't blame them for doing that. So my girlfriend, she's got a lot of good qualities. If she wanted to, she could get another boyfriend. A lot easier than I could get another girlfriend, I think. So I think the fear of loss with her, like I feel like we're on the edge of ending if I can't sort out my work situation, money situation. I think this is it. And I think maybe it is the neurotic mind that does this, but people would say you're catastrophizing. I don't know if you are. I think you're just seeing the reality of the situation, but you're just seeing it a few steps beyond what regular people can see it. They think, it's going to be, difficult because you're going to have to find a new job. And I'm like, okay, well, I know what finding a new job looks like, and it's not going to be easy for certain reasons that, I've almost failed but tried to point out in this video. And then, I just think, okay, so it's going to be difficult. And even, if I can't do it, then just everything will just, if I can't make more money, the relationship will end. It'll put me in a very difficult position. And then, obviously it's not a nice thing to feel like, a relationship you spent a lot of time devoted to building up is just going to be kind of thrown out. And it really does hinge on the work situation. But if you're struggling with that, whether it's your fault or not, you still feel the bad feelings when things aren't working out. So I think that's partly what's getting on top of me. Like I say, I don't know if I've really articulated this well enough. I think I've deliberately covered up some details of this whole talk because perhaps I'm too embarrassed to be too specific or something. But at the same time, I'm being more honest than I feel comfortable with. And I hope that in some small way, someone could get something out of the fact that I'm being like that. But we'll see what happens in the future. As for today, I'm going to have to do what I think anyone else should do if they're also feeling depressed. So in the rare event that this gets, like I say, more than 10 video views, or even if it does, if one of those people is dealing with some sort of depression themselves, having at least been through this before, let me just tell you that I think the thing you and I need to do is to, give ourselves a break, be kind to ourselves, at least for today, if it's feeling worse today than it was yesterday or whatever. Try and spend some time recovering. And then in the back of your mind, let your subconscious sort of run its processes and allow you to sort of unconsciously come up with some sort of solution to your problem. Like, I don't really think me giving advice really going to help, because there's nothing really I can say to anyone who's depressed to get them out of a depression. But if you can just, if you just don't, if you don't end yourself and you carry on with life, at least there's an opportunity for your brain in the background to potentially come up with a solution, or somewhat of a solution to part of the problem. And then it's just taking little baby steps, I think, to just ease back into not necessarily normal life. Like, even if things are going great for me, and I'm not normal, I'm not living the normal life, but you know, I know what it's like to feel reasonably content, and that is not how I feel right now. But I know that at least that possibility is on the table. So anyway, thanks for joining me for my little talk. Thanks for listening to how it's been for me, and I hope that maybe it helped in some way. Even just listening to someone else have some issues, and know that if you're also having an issue, yeah, you're not the only one. There's other people in the world that are struggling with their own stuff, and you know, I'm not going to say your stuff's worse than mine or mine stuff's worse than yours. It's a stupid thing to argue about. But certainly, we're just humans. We really are just trying our best to, you know, I'm just trying my best to be a good person, and I hope that I have the strength to carry on so that I can continue to do that. Okay, thanks.